Hello to all of my chat family, to all of my Gems family. I wanted to say, hey, happy Monday. I'm back again for another topic. It's something that I was just thinking about. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to come in and just do a pretty short topic, 15, 20 minutes or so. So this came up. I was talking to one of my girlfriends about this, and she shared her opinion. Hey, Joshua, how are you doing? Welcome. And she shared her opinion, and I wanted to hear what everybody else's opinion is. It could be controversial, and of course, everyone is always entitled to their opinions. There's no hard and fast rule saying what I think or what you think has to apply to everyone. But I just honestly want to know what everybody's opinion is. Hey, Joe, how are you doing? Welcome. How was your day? How was everybody's day? How was everyone's Monday? So let's get into this topic, okay? Is household chores only for women? So, like I said, me and my girlfriends, we were talking about this and laughing a few days ago about it, and I want to know what my Gems family has to say about it. So, the reason why I say this is because society isn't what it used to be. I think there was different expectations when things was different. Things were different back in the day for my grandparents, aunts, and even my mom, because that was just the role at the time. Women didn't work outside of the home. You were just home and you took care of children. And for some, that is still the case. And I'm happy for anybody for whatever situation you're in and it's working. I'm just having a conversation, just some commentary on this subject. I wanted to know what you all think. But I wanted to preface this conversation to ask because there are some that have one opinion and the others have their opinion. And like I said, there's no right and there's no wrong. I'm just going to share my personal opinion. Joe says she's good. So I just wanted to ask you guys, is household chores only for women? How do you look at this uh, question? Okay. So according to some of my friends, they believe that women should do the inside work and men should do the outside work. So, whatever's happening in the home, I guess, cleaning and cooking and things like that. And then men would do the outside work. But my opinion was, what if you live in a climate where there is no outside work to do, really? Some places you live in an apartment, you don't live in a home. So, what about that? When it comes to those things, my personal opinion is that everybody has to do what works for them. There are certain family units that the father is the stay at home dad and the wife or the girlfriend works outside and he stays at home with the kids because that works better for them. Some share the responsibilities of cooking and cleaning. Some families, one person does it all and others do other things. My most important thing that I wanted to ask you is, talking today about balance. I think in these days, balance is so important. Hi, Tracy. How are you doing? Happy Monday. Hope everybody's doing amazing. Hope you had a great day. Hey, Sirius, how are you doing? Welcome in. Hope everybody had an awesome day. My day was okay. It's a pretty chill day. Yeah, it definitely has been. Thank you so much for asking, Sirius. So I want to hear everybody's opinions in the comment section. I'm not going to come for anybody. This is just a open commentary and dialogue, just to hear from different, opinions and situations. And you know how I grew up, coming from a Caribbean family, and that was just things are just old fashioned because life is not the same as it is in the United States. It's a third world country, so things are different, values are different, people are different. um, when my parents got married, my dad was, of course, the breadwinner. My mom stayed at home and, cooked and cleaned, and that's just the way it was. But the everything changed when my mom and my dad migrated from Jamaica to America, because my dad still had the same mentality that, because he was working on the outside, that he didn't have to work on the inside. But when it shifted and you're working at a place and both, husband and wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, or whoever is in the household, if everybody works, who is expected to do these things? I think that's a very important conversation. And a lot of people will just expect, just assume, sitting and waiting for the other person to pick up the slack or to do whatever it is. And I do think it's based on how you were raised, what you saw when you were growing up. And yeah, it's a lot of different factors for the reason why people operate the way that they operate. But that's just how I was raised, just to give a little bit of preview and a little bit of a backstory. Hey, Realist, how are you doing? Welcome. How I grew up, that's how it was. The women were supposed to do everything in the house, but that was during the times where my mom didn't work. She was just solely home to care for a home and care for the children. But is it supposed to be the same way when both work outside of the home? Like, what honestly is fair? Is it supposed to be because both are working, both share the responsibilities of keeping the home? Or do you come to some sort of agreement about something? I just, I feel like this is a very interesting conversation. Joe says, in my personal experiences in the past, chores were shared to help the home run as a family. Ex-husband liked to cook and preferred to. He even wanted me to teach him to cook Mexican food. Oh, okay, Joe. So there you go. That's what Joe's personal situation and her experiences in the past. I think, I just personally think it's helpful when you have multiple people who are willing to do it. I think the problem exists when one just expects, like, you're a woman and you do the cleaning because I worked all day. My problem with that situation is, if you have children, um, how is it that you are supposed to handle working, taking care of kids, cooking and cleaning when someone, I don't want to say someone, but say the husband or the boyfriend, he works, but what if you work too? Is there a balance? Is there something that, you bring up? How do you approach that conversation? Is that something that you talk about before the relationship even gets serious, or you move in together? Or is it something that you cross the bridge when you get there? Oh, it's just how your family worked. Okay, Joe, I understand that. Hey, Liz, how are you doing? Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Tracy says, I think it's equal parts, even though I grew up only seeing my mom cook, clean, and work. Dad worked somewhat sometimes. Yeah. That was just mainly my point of this topic and this conversation. That I grew up seeing my mom so overwhelmed with um, with working a full-time job just like my dad did, and I would see my mom, you know cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kids, and I would see my dad come home and go take a shower, and then he would go and relax, turn on the TV, put his feet up, and just my mom, I used to see my mom so overwhelmed and stressed. And of course, because I was a kid, back in the day, you could never give your thoughts and opinions, or you were, you were going to get jacked up, like for real. You better be quiet. But my personal opinion as an adult, things aren't what they used to be. And I think those values are kind of old fashioned, in my opinion. If if both are working, I think responsibilities should be shared. But that's just my personal opinion. Each household is different and should be ran the way it's best for both parties. Right, Liz. That's all, honestly, I'm trying to say is that, have this sort of conversation just to see what you all think and things like that. But that's the way I grew up and what I saw, but I didn't necessarily agree with it, you know? And you weren't allowed to disagree, I remember when I moved out and I had my apartment, and my mom used to be like, "Well, you have to do that, for the man. You have to do that." I said, "No, you don't." You know? He can make his own meal. He can cook, he can make a bed, and it's not on the topic, but I think sometimes because of the way we were raised and the things that we see, I feel like sometimes we start, I wouldn't say trouble, but you start off the relationship doing all of these things and feel overwhelmed and stressed out about it. And then you never have the conversation to say how you really feel, because, it's like you made that person into a monster, per se. You made this problem, and then, you're overwhelmed and stressed out about it. I guess it depends on the person. If you like to cook and if you like to clean, I think that's a very important conversation, because sometimes it's just like a given sometimes to think that as a woman, all women like to clean, all women like to cook, and not all women are, naturally predisposed to that. Some women are more of the entrepreneur. They're the one to grind and to make the money and to have the business mindset and to do those things. And maybe the husband or the boyfriend is more on the side of, keeping a home. Maybe he does better. Maybe he thrives in that situation. I just think, to each his or her own. But I don't think that it's a good idea to just say across the board that women do this and men do that. That's my personal opinion. I just think whatever is working, do that. And sometimes I will say sometimes it's not working. And my question is, should everyone share the chores? That's a question, and I think that it's important to address this as well if there are children in the household or you have kids there. What is a balanced thing? Like, do the kids do the dishes? Do they dry? Do they put it away? Do they sweep? Do they mop? In addition to keeping a room, you know, just some ideas and some thoughts, because sometimes maybe in a family you may be thinking this, but a lot of times you don't want to rock the boat because there may be trouble or drama. Not everybody has the household where it's a free space to express yourself. You're not free to open up and to say how you feel. it may be looked at, you're lazy as a woman, or you're lazy as a man, or a man is a punk if he cooks and he cleans and he does chores. So I believe times are changing, and with changing times, you know, you have to adjust. That's just my opinion. Um, let's see. Realist says, I agree with that, Marlene. I think in this era, the role and label thing is played out. It's about however folk choose to get things done. It's what works for them. I'm glad you said that, realist, because sometimes, like I said, I was talking to my girlfriends, and I can have an opinion as a woman. My girlfriends have an opinion as a woman, but I like to hear the opinions of my male Gems family, and what they think about it. Because we can think what we think, but I think it's important to ask across the board what others truly think. Joe says, however, I've met men who don't cook, and I love to cook, and I learned it's a love language for me, something I didn't know before. So I guess I will adapt with the situation or the person I'm with. Yeah, I think that's important too, Joe, is to for me, when I got to be grown, I struggled for a long time feeling like I wasn't a good woman because I didn't do what my mom did, or aunties, or my siblings, my sisters did. And I wanted to do something different. Like, it was looked at me like I was a strange person. Like, why are you going to college? Why are you trying to have a business? You know, they look at that as you're trying to be masculine. And I don't believe in gender roles, to be honest. I don't believe in that. Um, my opinion is, I think that it's old fashioned. I think that it's based on your personality, where you live, your culture, and how your relationship is working. I think the most important thing is whether you are a husband and wife, whether you are boyfriend and girlfriend, whether you are, even sometimes a family unit could be, maybe your parent is living with you, maybe a sibling. Whatever it is, you have to have a conversation. I think a lot of people just assume because one person is doing things, that everything is okay. And there needs to be a check-in to ask, like, okay, is everything okay? Are we good? But a lot of times there will be like, oh, everything is fine. No, you say everything is fine, but do you know for sure? Have you asked? Are you happy? Are we happy? Are things working out? Because if something may have worked years ago, as you grow, as you mature, as you have different experiences in your life, maybe what you started off in the beginning of your relationship, later on you're not on that vibe, you're not on that vibration anymore. You want to do something different, and it can cause a rift in a relationship sometimes, because say you change. Everybody is stuck in the ways things used to be done. Yeah. And that is what I don't like, realist. I'm the type of person that it's fine if it's working, but sometimes people will say it's working because they don't want to put forth any effort. They don't want to do anything. They just would rather just say oh, it worked. It was working when I grew up. My mom did that. That didn't mean it was working. It was just what used to happen, because a lot of times, I'll just say it this way, plain and straight. A lot of times women were afraid to speak up because of the repercussions. A lot of times women didn't speak up because they didn't want their husbands or their boyfriends to leave them. But now things are different. There are rights. Everybody has the right to have their opinion and what they want to do and what they like. And that's why we have conversations and topics like this, just to let others know that, everybody can have the right to feel how they feel and to want what they want, and that you don't have to be like your upbringing. You don't have to be like your friends or your siblings. You have to find what works for you and your family. Joe says, I believe chores are for children's teaching and training so they learn once they grow up. That's my way to teach my son to wash his own clothes, etc. I don't want him to have to rely on a woman. Yes, and then there's that, Joe. You know, there's some things that I saw when I was growing up, and I openly and freely say that I didn't like it. I used to see some things, and of course, you had to zip your mouth, or you were probably going to get, slapped in your face or disciplined or something. That was going to be a harsh punishment for opening up your mouth and stating your opinion, because kids' opinions weren't really readily accepted. They didn't want to hear it because they said, you don't have any money, and this is my house, right? How many people been through that? But as I've grown up and I've seen other people and their households, and yeah, things are getting done in the household. But I think in every relationship, you have to see, are both of you happy? See, sometimes one person can be happy, but that's because they're not doing anything. They're not that they're not doing anything, because doing something is an important part. And I do believe in validating each thing that someone does in the relationship. If a husband's working, if a wife is working, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is, whoever in the household is working, it's important to validate each person and to tell each one, thank you for what you do. Thank you for the role that you are playing. But at the same time, also, I need a little assistance. I need a little more support from you. I'm thankful for what you do, but I need a little more. And I think that this is the conversation that needs to be had. Some people truly are afraid to say that. I had one of my girlfriends that said that. She said she doesn't feel very comfortable about her current situation in her relationship, but she doesn't want to say anything because she knows that they'll be upset, and most likely they're not going to do anything anyways, because that was just the way I was raised, and that's how it's going to be. Hey Nate, how are you doing? Welcome. But like everything in life, and things can change, and you can elevate and you can grow and you can do something different. But like I was saying, I feel everyone should do something from a young child. I've even seen in households little kids, even from walking age. From I was a little girl, there used to be a step stool that you got on, and you took that dish cloth and you dried a dish, and then you hand it off to somebody who's older, and they put it away. Or you would go and get garbage bags, and you would pull the trash from the bathroom, from the bedrooms, from the kitchen, and just take it and pull it to the side, and somebody's older would take it and bring it outside and empty the trash. So even little things like that, you know you never want to discount and say somebody is too young, or somebody can't, they're too young. And I know that, if I'm going to be real and honest and transparent, I disabled some of my relatives, bringing plates of food to them, doing certain things, cooking, cleaning up after them, washing their clothes, ironing, so on and so forth. So, of course, when you stop doing that, you know, they, I feel sometimes when we feel we're helping somebody, we're hurting them. It's nothing wrong with doing something for somebody, on both sides, a husband or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or helping one another and assisting one another. But I think it's important to say as well, let there be a balance, give each other a break on both sides. even if there's household, outside chores to do, take a break sometimes. Pay for somebody to cut the grass, pay somebody to fix something that needs to be fixed in the home, or whatever the case may be. And if your financial situation is that maybe you can get somebody to come in and clean your home maybe once a month or every 2 weeks, depends on your situation. And that's why everybody has to know their situation and do what is working. But one thing that I don't like is when there's laziness. Okay. That's a real pet peeve of mine, is when there's individuals, and I don't care who it is. It could be the father, it could be the mother, because that happens too, where um, a husband, a boyfriend, a parent, and there's one or more people in the household that is not pulling their weight. Because there are people who are, it's not just they won't do anything, they're very messy, sloppy, and they just throw their stuff around. They won't assist, they won't cook, they won't clean. Some people will not work in the home. So there's a lot of issues along with the issues, right? And everybody has to do what works for them. Okay. Let's see. Thank you so much, Sirius. Joe says, oh, I think I read that one already. I did. Let's see what else I missed. Other comments. Okay, I think I got to the bottom of the list. But this is what I wanted to say. One could be overwhelmed in the household while the others are well rested. And I don't think that's cool either on either side, because Marlene doesn't discriminate. I don't, I'm not going to say, oh, because it's a woman, if a woman is lazy or sloppy or, is not, taking care of her own children, because that's a conversation for another day. Not everybody, because they are a woman, have maternal instincts or have are very good cooks or good at cleaning or whatever the case may be. But just because you may not be great at it does not give you an escape to not at least try, pull your weight, do something to assist. And even if somebody is doing something, I think you could, one person is cooking, the other person could be right there, chopping up something, washing the dishes, sweeping or mopping, doing whatever. So when the cooking is done, there's no cleanup. And when after the food is eaten, some other people can wash the dishes, dry them, and put them away. I think that that's a balance in a household. And that's all I'm trying to say is balance. That's it. Balance, balance, balance. No gender roles, just balance. So, and I always want to say, shout out to the real men who are out there taking care of their kids, taking care of their households. I appreciate the real men. I also shout out to all of the good women out there that are holding it down, taking care of their kids, their responsibilities. And also shout out to the kids that are out there going to school, being respectful, and just being a good member of the household. You have to give credit where credit is due. A good family is based on balance and support in the family. But some families do not have that balance because nobody wants to have that conversation, And I am of the idea that it's better for people to live separately or people to go get their own space than to overwhelm one person. Because I've seen that too, where it's not just like it's a multi-family situation, that it's not just husband and wife. Sometimes it's your parents may live with you, maybe grandparents, an aunt, a cousin, other people, and that, can be an addition to, finding out what is going to be that person's role within the family. The only reason for this conversation, to be honest, was to say that everybody has a role to play. Every single person is important. It's not just like, oh, women are the ones and they run things, or men are the ones and they run things, or kids, because I've seen situations where kids are running the family, like, they're running the house, they're making it miserable for everybody in there. And I've seen women who are being controlling and jealous, who are, running everything, and also men who are running things and controlling and doing things. And either situation is not good. There has to be a balance, there has to be support, there has to be love. And, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. As long as your household is being run smoothly, and everybody is supported, and there is respect. Yes, realist. Yes. People assume based on gender, and it really shows how closed-minded some individuals are. Hey, Lisa, how are you doing? Happy Monday. Thank you for being here. If you guys have not already, please hit the like. So, I'm going to put the link in here if there's anybody who wants to pop on and lead, give their commentary. I am going to put this in the chat for a moment. And if there's nobody that has anything to say, then your girl is going to get out of here. But I did want to say that I think households really need to be happy. I think if you are in a situation where you're not happy, because a lot of times people live together just because of the financial situation, and they're not happy. And that's not good. Everybody should be happy within a family, and sometimes the only way you're going to get your happiness is you're going to have your own space, your own pad, your own apartment, or your own home, because some individuals will just not do anything. They will make the place miserable because they're miserable, or they will be controlling, or, just bring discord, bring separation and drama. So, everybody's grown on here. Everybody, every single person that comes to my channel, we're all grown people. So, this was a grown folks conversation. And we're mature enough to say that, we can agree to disagree, because I have an opinion. It doesn't mean that it has to be yours, but we can come together and can have a conversation and talk about things, and let it be what it is. You share your opinion, I share my opinion. But I just wanted to know what you all were thinking, because me and my girlfriends were talking about this, and I wanted to know what the Gems family thought. I wanted to know what your opinion was. So I don't see anybody hit the link. So I'm going to get up out of here. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. I really enjoyed this topic, and I'll try to do more like 30-minute topics from time to time, talking about certain things. So I appreciate you all. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday evening, and hopefully I can go live again. I want to say Wednesday night, yeah, or Wednesday evening, something like that. Okay, I'll see y'all there. Everybody have a great evening. Shout out to my mods. Make sure you check out my mods. Check out my channel members. You know who you are. And I will add you when this live stream is over. This is Life with Marlene, your Florida vlogger. And you know what I say? Love your life and live your life. I'll see you all on the next one.